Melissa Haffeman will give the next presentation of After the Millennials, The Rise of Generation Z. Melissa Haffeman serves as the Director of Instructional Technology at Bethel School District in Washington State. She has been instrumental in the rollout of over 19,000 iPads to students and teachers, revolutionizing the way technology is used in K-12 classrooms.
Welcome to the talk about Generation Z, or how children born after 2000 will shape the workforce in 2018 and beyond. I'm Melissa Haffeman, and I'll be talking with you today from the vantage point of being the Director of Instructional Technology for Bethel School District. We're located just outside of Tacoma, Washington, and we're poised to start a 19,000 iPad device rollout K-12 to all teachers, students, and administration throughout the district. You can find me on LinkedIn.com to connect with me after the presentation. So let's jump right in. There are really 4 key competencies that this generation, Generation Z, is going to bring to education already and will bring to the workforce. And those really focus and center around communication, collaboration, personalization, and makers or maker spaces. We're going to talk about each one of those 4 core competencies in this presentation. We're going to talk about what it means, how it looks in education today, and how we're preparing these children for the workforce, and what we could expect in the workforce and how it will change that environment. First of all, communication. Everyone in the workforce at this point is pretty much familiar with email and voicemail. Those are our primary methods and comfortable methods of communicating with one another. There are inherent problems with this also. Email, you can't really rely that the person got it, they've looked at it, you don't get notifications such as that unless you have those additional filters put on. There's a lot of lag time between sending an email and leaving a voicemail. What we're finding is that this current generation, Generation Z, prefers text communication. Texting is immediate, it's frequent, it sends small snippets of information that's needed right away or just in time. Another thing that is happening and what's impacting education already is this idea of predictive typing. So we're talking, do we still teach kids keyboarding? Do we teach them cursive? Do we even need to teach them keyboarding anymore when our keyboards are starting to become really intelligent and predictive? The swiping system on our SwiftKey keyboards now become more intelligent. It learns over time which word pairs you tend to use together. It becomes better at predicting. And typing, as we know it with 2 hands on a keyboard, is quickly being replaced by swiping with 1 finger on a keyboard. It's eminently more efficient, and it has huge implications for how we will work in the future and communicate with one another. So just some stats for you. From Business Intelligence Insider, they say that young Americans send almost 10 times as many texts as Americans over the age of 55. So you think about that, with managers being anywhere from about 35 to 55, and then the new incoming workers are much more familiar with texting in that primary mode of communication. And so there could be a communication breakdown between how the managers and the leaders in the work environment want to communicate or expect to communicate with their younger employees. Those same smartphone owners 18 to 24, which is slightly outside of our demographic of Generation Z, but it's the only one we can really pull data on so far. An average smartphone user from 18 to 24 years of age sends about 2,022 texts per month. They send an average of 67 texts per day. This is a massive amount of communication that's going by text instead of by phone or email. Now, in education, what does this mean? We're starting to see that there are students reaching out to teachers and teachers reaching out to parents, all through text communication. With this, you can see here that there's a sample message. Hey, Miss Souza, how are you? I have a quick question. What's up? I need you to please tell me the correct translation for let go, let God in Italian. And then she jokes, please tell me it's not for a tattoo. This is far more familiar and open form of communication because of the text nature than we've ever experienced in the past. Usually your teacher lives in the schoolroom. If you see them outside of school, it's a phenomenal shock. You communicate with them during that prescribed time and not afterwards. You don't even really email your teacher. But now that we're seeing more text communication, we're seeing a lot more familiarity and a breakdown in the sage on the stage and more to a facilitator of learning, which is really changing the relationship, and it's happening because of this text communication. We're also seeing increased peer-to-peer support. Think back to when you studied math in about 6th grade. Could you turn to a neighbor and ask them how to solve the problem? Could you work in a group and figure out the solution to the problem? Typically, we'd say no. It was individual work. It was one way to do it, and you really worked on your own with a lot of privacy. What we're seeing now is that with the advent of these one-to-one computing with the iPads and the software that's now going with it, every student's work on a problem in math gets submitted up to the teacher automatically because of the program they're working on. The teacher then can show every student's work on the board at any time. So we're really seeing the end of private work or private communication. We're highly encouraging peer-to-peer support and that everything that you do can be shared with the whole. Here's an example of what it could look like for a teacher. What teachers are using right now is that they can see every single student's device. So this is a laptop environment. And at any point, that teacher can put that student's device or their main screen up on the projector, or can project it for everyone in the class to see. I don't know about you, but I remember a class where it was my pencil and paper and I turned it into a box and she graded it and I got it back about a week later. And nobody ever knew how much I knew, what I was struggling with, or what my grades were. Everything is wide open these days, especially with these technologies. Now in the workplace, how does this translate? I like this one here, which says that mini heart attack when you send a text to the wrong person. Texting your boss is a relatively new thing. I have been texting my most recent boss more than I ever expected, and I'm getting texts from my old boss who teases me about leaving. It's far more familiar and personal in communication these days. Additionally, if I'm working on a project, I can text my boss and ask a specific piece of information so that I don't hold up my project. And he often can text me even if he's in a meeting, which that's a whole nother discussion. But the problems that can come of this with this communication that's happening is that a lot of people are starting to realize that because we always have these smartphones and they know that they can always get a hold of you, there's a problem. An example of this, so with increased communication and always having your smartphone with you, people know they can get a hold of you. Often, I felt the need to check my phone before I went to sleep and check my phone first thing in the morning because I knew that there was one person on my team who would email about 2 a.m. and I needed to respond to that before I ever got into the morning meeting because there would have been a whole conversation that would be happening over email and text that if I didn't respond to it, I'm really out of the loop by the time I sit down at the table with this group of people. I'm already way behind the conversation. And so there's an interesting solution out there. France has recently enacted a rule that, and I'll just read it here for you, a new labor agreement in France means that employees must ignore their boss's work emails once they are out of the office and relaxing at home, even on their smartphones. So we're starting to come to terms with what it means to be connected 24/7 and what it means to have a work-life balance. So this is something I see impacting the workplace and these students and how it changes what we see as work-life balance and what it means to be ubiquitously connected to the office. Back to those 4 core competencies: communication, collaboration, personalization, and makers or maker spaces. We're going to focus next on collaboration. Generation Z is often debated whether it's going to be called Generation Z or the collaboration generation. What we find with these group of students and people is that they love to collaborate. Everything they share, think, like, dislike, if they're happy, sad, breaking up, or getting back together, they share it with one another. It's another example of the end of privacy and the end of isolation. Everything is shared. To give you an idea of this, Here are some interesting stats. There are 4.5 billion likes average daily on Facebook. When I first read this number, I thought surely that must be in a year. But there are 4.5 billion different interactions with hitting the like button, in essence, voting or saying, yes, I agree with this. Yes, I like this. Here's my opinion. This is where I sit on this issue, from everything from a cute cat video to the latest thing that Pope Francis did. Now, if we look at how highly connected our students are, teens have an average of 300 friends on Facebook. When you get into the 200, 300 range, we find that people still know each other and are connected enough that they care, in essence, of what the person is saying, thinking, or doing. Extrapolating this into the classroom, a teacher now no longer interacts privately with about 30 students. That teacher, in essence, is interacting with 30 students and every one of their 300 friends, potentially. So if something happens in the classroom, if the teacher is wrong, if the students want to research something, if the teacher does something crazy like fall asleep at their desk, the students can video, they can send it out to their friends. Very quickly it becomes viral. It's no longer a private interaction between teacher and classroom. Extrapolating this then to the workplace, you're not just working with one person. Now you're working with their network through such tools as LinkedIn. Another key aspect of this is the sharing of information or user-created information collaboration. YouTube, according to Nielsen, YouTube reaches more U.S. adults 18 to 34 more than any other cable network. That's a phenomenal shift. Generation Z is opting in to user and peer collaborations on videos than they are with traditional content that comes from an impersonal network and is delivered to them. In education, what we're starting to see is that collaboration is being specifically taught. You can see here in this picture that there are class norms. The mark of a good teacher is that at the beginning of the year, they gather the students together and they say how we're going to work collaboratively. We're going to listen to each other's ideas. We're going to take turns. We're going to be respectful. Some teachers even go so far as scripting it, and you can tell when students say, I like your idea, and I would like to elaborate. And it's very cute to see this in action. Students are already practicing in the elementary levels how to collaborate with respect. They are doing this on group projects. So in this picture here, you see a traditional 1950s classroom. Learning's very private. Everybody's individual. And now, this picture here, you can see these swivel chairs. These swivel chairs are a great example of the type of furniture that's evolving in our schools today so that we can have flex spaces. We no longer build classrooms to be the 1950s model. We build them to be highly flexible environments that students can work on pods, they can work collaboratively, they can work individually. We can gather together as a class. We can differentiate based upon who needs what, and these spaces, even down to the furniture, are dramatically changing in look and feel. And now in this picture, I wanted to highlight project-based learning. Project-based learning is a fantastic example of collaboration in the educational environment and how we're training these students to go about their work, to see the value of their work, and to see the value of interacting with their communities. An example here is that an elementary class helped design a new downtown for their community. They then presented these designs after talking with experts in the community, such as architects, city planners, and they presented their model downtown to the city council. In here, we had focused on math, reading, writing. All of that is interwoven, social studies and science, interwoven into these project-based challenges for students, but with a real world and real application to their work. Taking that into the workplace. Starting first on collaboration pods. So there's been a lot of talk and a lot of experimentation with open floor plans. What we're finding is that people don't really prefer to work open all the time, that what they prefer are collaboration pods. Libraries in our schools are starting to be redesigned, and computer labs are starting to be redesigned into collaboration pods. And when you study this, you find that students and people in general, including myself, prefer to work in these booth environments where you can gather together in a small group of about 4 to 6 individuals. You share a computer screen or a TV that you can plug into and show your work and collaborate with your peers. Workspaces and buildings and offices need to change from these individual cubes or compartments to maybe smaller offices, but with nicer collaboration pods that can be checked in and out as needed. There's a natural connection to the problem-based projects that we're teaching students to do in the classroom, where with real-world examples and real-world experts, students are going to come into the workforce with this ability. They're going to expect that their work has a real-world connection and is solving a problem. They're not going to be afraid to reach out and speak with local experts. They are comfortable assessing each other, and so evaluations could look very different in the future. Instead of the traditional evaluation between manager and employee, it will probably include everyone on the team, perhaps people outside of the organization, because they're comfortable and they value broad feedback. And the last thing is that you can expect Generation Z workers to come in already knowing how to function in work groups. High functioning, they know the roles, they've been practicing this for the last 12 years essentially, and they'll come in and expect that they can work in high functioning work groups and environments. Back to the 4 key competencies: communication, collaboration, personalization, and makers. Let's talk about personalization next. So personalization, we naturally think of the iPad. The iPad is a one-to-one device. It is meant to be personal and customized. What we're seeing right now is the discussion or the debate about, do we use iPads in education or do we use Chromebooks, which just give access to online tools? In our district, we're opting in for iPads because of the high personalization and the ability of these devices to radically transform what we do in the classroom, that will enhance good teaching and learning with tools that enable us to redefine how school works, how teaching and learning works, that students can do things never before possible. An example of that is that the traditional book report is going away. You and I are probably very familiar with typing a book report, 5 pages in Word and turning it in. Now students can create a trailer. They can create their own music. They overlay lyrics. They create a video. A compelling group work all through this personalized device that's sending it in to a teacher. Now, an interesting thing that's happening is that K-12 is starting to move towards learning management systems. Canvas is a learning management system. It started off in higher ed. It's moving its way into K-12 right now. It's a way of organizing all of the work and all of the online interactions that happen, from turning work in to discussion forums to collaboration spaces such as wiki pages to online grading and reporting. Canvas is just starting to move into the corporate sector. Companies can use Canvas to help keep track of training, professional development, and can create collaboration spaces online for teams to work. And this here is a shift, a massive shift that is about 2 to 3 years out, and it's something that we're exploring right now with some interesting results. Badging. I don't know if you've heard of it, but badges are basically visual representations of a skill or achievement. If you think about Girl Scouts had badges, Boy Scouts had badges. At first you think badging is a little cheesy. What we have found is that we've started experimenting. We want badging to be used in the classroom as a way to acknowledge student learning or skills or achievement, that kids can gather these badges both online and in a tactile, concrete sense also, through a sticker or a chip, where they can have a record of their learning and their skills over time. It's separate from a grade book. It's something a little more fun. It's eye-catching. It's publicly displayed, and it's a way for people to know who knows what. We have experimented with badging in our district, and just for fun, we made a badge called iPad Ninja. So the superintendent and the administration came and received their iPads. They went through a little bit of training. At the end of the day, we handed them a sticker, And I'm talking just a sticker from Office Max printed on it with iPad Ninja. We made it look nice. And you know what? When I walk around, I still see iPad Ninja stickers on people's coffee cups, on their laptops, or on the back of their iPad. They're proud of it. And now what started to happen is that in different meetings that we hold, we gave a very funny Awesome Possum sticker for people who went above and beyond with their reporting so that we could see what they were doing in their classrooms. We handed them Awesome Possum. We thought this would just be an easy introduction that would sort of be fun. Well, what happened is one of the assistant superintendents came up to me and she said, I saw so-and-so had an Awesome Possum sticker. How did they get that? And how do I get that? What do I have to do to get the Awesome Possum sticker? This is taking us by surprise, and we're exploring it right now. So badging is something that's coming up. It'll be something that our students know how to use, and it'll be something that'll be impacting the workforce in a few years. So personalization in education looks like personal devices. There's a dramatic increase of one-to-one computing, one-to-one devices, whether that's a Chromebook or that's an iPad. There's an increased importance on creativity. Another thing that we're seeing is the importance of the learning management system, a place to organize all of your work online and collaborate. Our highest area of growth without any pushing whatsoever is for the adults within the environment, the employees within the school district to finally have a place where they can collaborate online. And the last thing is in education badging, making learning public, being able to display what your skills are. You create your own unique set of badges that profile your skills and abilities. It's no longer on a private resume, it's public. It's on your door, it's the chips, it's maybe on your card, it's maybe on your ID card. I see 4 key trends in personalization in the workplace. Mobility is first. Laptops, iPads. People can work where they want to, when they want to. This is really nothing new here, but with mobility, students are going to be used to not sitting in their desks. These students are going to come into the work environment and expect to collaborate at a coffee shop or in a collaboration pod. They're going to expect that when they need to work privately, they'll take their device and they'll go work in an office. They will need that freedom and flexibility in their environment. You maybe not be able to find them in their office, so you could text them and check in on them. There's going to be an increased need for creativity. These students are used to putting their own flavor, their own approach to any problem or solution. And lastly, this badging or showcasing idea, or what I hope to see actually, is that badging starts to show, much like an ID badge, your name and where you work and your access level, that you would have a badge behind this that would show what you're a specialist in. Maybe it shows your strengths finder skills. Maybe you have a red card that says, you're an implementer. Maybe you have a green card that says that you're really interested in keeping the team together and on task. Maybe it shows that you've gone to specialized training. All of this will be public and hanging around your neck, or it will be a sticker on your office door. I'm sure it'll look nicer over time. It's pretty rudimentary right now. But it's a way for people to very quickly learn what your strengths are and how you can utilize that in the workplace. It's no longer private, and that's the point. So the final competency of these 4 key competencies of communication, collaboration, personalization, and makers. This one I think is my favorite. So makers. I like to talk about it as the rise of the makers. It's the best phrase I've heard about this so far. We are about to embark on the rise of the makers. And to give you an example of this, Microsoft has a 24-hour idea factory that they call the garage. And you can see in this picture, there's some 3D printer, all these different devices, more do, less talk. It's a place to go in and get your hands on something, explore, invent, create, personalize, collaborate. It's makers. Then the idea of a maker space really encapsulates those core areas that we are seeing being so important, including engagement as well. So what does makers look like, and what is makerspace all about? Well, the easiest one is really 3D printing. This is an example of a student's 3D printer that he created out of other 3D parts. He actually had to collaborate with another guy who had a 3D printer outside of the college and print the parts that he needed to build his own 3D printer. And that's his first little cube on the platform right there. So makers and maker spaces are heavily influenced by 3D printing. What this means in the classroom is that if a student is studying T-Rexes or dinosaurs, no longer do you have to just read about it in your social studies book and look at a picture. If you're interested, you can model it. You can go out there and find examples of it and print it right there in the classroom, hold it in your hand, pass it around, and learning becomes more engaging because you're actually holding an example in your hand. It's more concrete. Now, as kids get older, some interesting things start to happen. Instead of printing the Eiffel Tower or King Tut so that you can look at all of those and learn, there's rapid prototyping. So this is from a CAD class. Students can create a tool or a resource in AutoCAD and then go over to the 3D printer and print it and hold it in their hands and see how these things fit together. This is phenomenally engaging and motivating for students. So in education, we're seeing the rise of 3D printers. We currently have 5 in our district, and it's about to increase dramatically. Additionally, there's a increased robotics. So students at the elementary level especially are competing in robotics competitions, primarily using the Lego robotics software. They're actually doing hands-on building of robots and programming them and sending them out for these competitions. It's very exciting. Students are very facile with this technology, and it's completely different from how we went to school. With this becomes increased responsibility. I was just in a school in Savannah. It was a maker space. I saw students walk in, and they grabbed a drill and a circular saw, and they went out to work on their trebuchets that they were building. The amount of trust, direct teaching, the amount of responsibility that these kids have and are given, and they don't want to lose that responsibility. So they adhere to the rules. They hold each other accountable. It's all that collaboration and communication, but paying off. It is being used to give them more increased responsibility so that they can create. So what do makers look like in the workplace? Well, the ability to rapid prototype is going to be phenomenal. You're going to have students or young employees coming into your environment that are very familiar and have used 3D printers for years. So when you have an idea or you need to take a look at a design, they're going to be able and expect to have a 3D printer in the space that they can throw their ideas out there, build something that they can actually have their hands on, pass around, tinker with. The rapid prototyping is going to be extremely beneficial, and you're going to have a workforce that already knows how to do it the moment they walk in the door. And they're going to do that through 3D printing. Here's an example of a 3D printer on a desk. These are pretty small. They're getting to be relatively cheap, and there's lots of different options out there. I would highly encourage you to start looking into 3D printing. It's phenomenal, and it's phenomenally interesting technology. And the last one is if you want high engagement and collaboration amongst your employees, I would suggest that you start looking into tinker spaces. Schools are just starting to move this way with the maker spaces or tinker spaces. It's where people can go. It's a little bit funky. It has a lot of different materials available. There's a lot of collaboration, group work. Ideas are born here and they are rapidly prototyped. It's kind of the meeting of all of those key ideas at the maker spaces. And so a quick overview of the 4 key core competencies that we talked about today: communication, collaboration, personalization, and makers or maker spaces. And the one that excites me most and that I think is the most disruptive innovation that is impacting or will impact the workforce in 5 to 10 years is this idea of the rise of the makers. Schools are just beginning to adjust to this, which means that the workplace will see it in about 5 to 10 years. And you're going to have highly capable individuals coming into your workplaces that know how to use 3D printers, know how to prototype, know how to collaborate, and know how to communicate about their ideas in ways that we never experienced ourselves in school or in the workforce. So I thank you for listening to the presentation today. I would love to talk with you about your ideas and any questions you have. My name is Melissa Haffeman. There's my email and LinkedIn, and thank you for your time.